In California, the worst measles outbreak in 15 years is spreading.
The virus is roaring back into the headlines tonight. An outbreak somehow traced to
someone who had probably caught measles abroad visited Disneyland and may have sneezed.
Measles on the march in America.
This outbreak is showing no signs of letting up. There are already more cases this year than there were.
The number tripled to 644 measles cases reported in 27 states.
And I mean, is this all basically because of the anti-vaccination movement, because parents aren't vaccinating their kids?
Yeah, you know, I think so.
A bill that would ban exemptions from childhood vaccines is advancing through the California legislature.
We are authoring legislation that will abolish the personal belief exemption.
I think you're starting to see why it is that mandates are so important.
There has been some inaccurate information circulating about vaccines, mostly stemming from a British study linking vaccines to autism.
We still continue to hear that vaccine caused autism, even though that's been debunked.
Repeatedly and thoroughly debunked.
You may have heard vaccination causes autism in 1 out of 110 children. Fuck that. Total bullshit. It doesn't.
The bill requiring children to be vaccinated has passed with bipartisan support. Every child must meet immunization standards before joining public schools, private schools, and daycares.
I would strongly encourage everybody, look at the science, look at the facts. CDC, the Center for Disease Control, can give you good information. Get your children vaccinated.
I have waited a long time to tell my story, and I want to tell it truthfully. I was involved in deceiving millions of taxpayers regarding the potential negative side effects of vaccines. We lied about the scientific findings. The CDC can no longer be trusted to do vaccine safety work. Can't be trusted to be transparent. The CDC can't be trusted to police itself. Just a few thoughts. William W. Thompson, Senior Scientist, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Hello?
I was sitting at my desk where I teach at Simpson University. My phone rings, and it's Dr. William Thompson.
Brian, you and I don't know each other very well. I don't know how this is all going to play out. You have a son with autism, and I have great shame now when I meet families with kids with autism, because I have been part of the problem.
My son, Stephen, was born in February of 1998.
Steve, what does the cow say?
Tweet, tweet.
Doggy.
Yeah. Doggy. 2 weeks after his 15-month vaccines, then he lost all language. He lost all eye contact. You'd pick him up and he would just hang limp. This is a time where CDC was just starting to do these studies on vaccines and autism. As a scientist, I have over 60 technical and scientific publications in major international scientific journals, and I was contacting the CDC and was deeply critical of their studies. And so the CDC decided that the scientist who was going to interface with me at that time was Dr. William Thompson. Because I was on his back, because he didn't like what I was saying about the statistics, I received a letter from a CDC attorney in 2004 saying that I was no longer permitted to contact the CDC. Fast forwarding to 2014, Thompson said to me, Brian, if you listen to me and if you do what I tell you to do, I can guarantee you will be able to access a treasure trove of data, and I would like to guide you through these steps.
So I want to be a resource. I want to be valuable to you. I want you to have someone in the system.
For years, I had been trying to crack this edifice of the CDC and just getting little glimpses of what was not right.
The CDC has put the research 10 years behind. Because the CDC has not been transparent, we've missed 10 years of research because the CDC is so paralyzed right now by anything related to autism.
I am a licensed clinical psychologist and a board-certified behavior analyst. In 1978, I want to say the prevalence of autism was about 1 in 15,000 children. It was a very rare disorder. I was working at a clinic at UCLA, which was pretty much the only known center for treating children with autism, and we had maybe 6 to 10 children who we were working with. Somewhere around the early 90s, shortly after I opened CARD, the growth of autism has been so high and so rapid that I've never felt like I could ever catch up anymore. From an official diagnostic perspective, the way that we define autism, we were looking at deficits in 2 areas. The first is social communication and social interaction. And in that area, we require 3 specific symptoms to be present. Symptoms such as no social emotional reciprocity, no non-verbal communication, that means eye contact, for instance, or no development of relationships. The second required area of deficit is the presence of stereotypic, repetitive, restricted behaviors. And these are things like hand flapping, body rocking, insistence on routines being the same. One of the new additions is the presence of a sensory dysregulation. If a child has an inability to sense things correctly, not necessarily hearing things the way we do, that could be classified as a symptom of autism. So if you have 5 symptoms, 2 in the area of repetitive behaviors and 3 in the area of social communication deficit, then you will get a classification of what's called autism spectrum disorder, ASD.
We begin, though, as always, keeping them on it. Breaking news tonight, just hours ago, the British medical journal BMJ did something extremely rare for a scientific journal. It accused a researcher, Andrew Wakefield, of outright fraud.
I got a call on the 19th of May 1995 from a mother telling me the story of her child, his regression into autism following a vaccine. And I said, how can I help you? I know nothing about autism. You've come through to the wrong number. And she said, no, doctor, my child has terrible gastrointestinal issues and no one will take them seriously. I was an academic gastroenterologist doing research with a particular interest in Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease. I knew nothing whatsoever about autism. When I was at medical school, it was so rare, we weren't taught about it. We heard a succession of stories which were very, very similar. Medicine is about pattern recognition, and there was a clear pattern emerging. So we decided, a group of us, including the world's leading pediatric gastroenterologists at the time, led by Professor John Walker-Smith, decided that these children merited thorough investigation.
Well, Dr. Wakefield has been shown used absolutely fraudulent data. He created a fake paper. The journal allowed it to run. All the other studies were done, showed no connection whatsoever, again and again and again. So it's an absolute lie that has killed thousands of kids.
And what we discovered and reported for the first time was this link between what appeared to be a novel type of intestinal inflammation and autistic regression in previously developmentally normal children. And among those, the majority had regressed into autism, according to their parents, following the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. It wasn't our place to censor their story because it may be uncomfortable for public health. Our job was to report that story accurately in order that it might lead to further investigation. And the paper explicitly said, this paper does not prove an association between MMR vaccine and the syndrome described. more work is needed to resolve this issue. That was the conclusion of the paper.
As an investigative medical journalist, I've spent the last 7 years working on one of the best medical talk shows in the world. We know in medicine that there have been many, many studies proving that vaccines do not cause autism. But the problem I have always had with that is thousands and thousands of parents all telling the same story. My child got a vaccine, usually the MMR vaccine, and then that night or the next day broke out in a fever. And then when they came out of the fever, lost speech, lost the ability to walk, basically regressed into what we know as autism and never came back. Doctors used to be told to listen to their patient. That was the cornerstone of medicine as we know it. But something's changed recently where the patient doesn't know what they're talking about. And these parents, with their story of their children, have just been written off as though they have no idea what's really going on with their child. I have 2 kids. And anyone that has children knows that when we first have babies, we are overly sensitive to every little hiccup, every cough, every sniffle. So to say that a parent was just unaware that their child had issues, and suddenly they realized 1 year later that, oh, they have autism, that doesn't make sense to me. And so I wanted to look into this story and find out, what is this disconnect between medicine, science, and real parents?
I couldn't wait to be a mum. I remember specifically, before we even got married, talking about how important children would be in our lives.
I wanted a daughter first, then I wanted a son, and we were planning on having 4 children.
We were going to be the most perfect parents that we could be.
Bella was born, and that was a wonderful experience.
Bella was just this angelic, perfect child. She hit all her milestones. I got pregnant with Billy quite quickly. Bella, say hello to Billy. Hello. We've now got a beautiful girl and a beautiful boy. And life was just amazing. So at 2, 4 and 6 months, Billy had his normal baby vaccines. A little bit snivelly, chesty, coldy after maybe the last one. So me, in my perfect mother mode, rushed to the doctor. Is he okay? Do I need to give him anything? Yes, you need to give him antibiotics, just to make sure there's not an infection in there. It didn't clear up. Rushing back to the doctor, and we need more antibiotics. Let's just keep this going in him. And I remember my mother calling me out. My mother's a sort of homeopathic hippie, and calling me up saying, what are you doing? You're chucking loads of antibiotics down your son. For what? And I was saying to her, Mum, with all due respect, you're an artist, and they're doctors, so they know best. He was due his MMR vaccination at 12 months. So the morning, exactly to the day, my friend, she said to me, listen, I've heard that there may be a problem with this vaccine we're about to take Billy for, the MMR. And I said, Liz, are you crazy? What is the matter with you? If there was a problem with this vaccination, it would be headline news. The doctor would be calling me up saying, do not bother coming in. This is not a safe vaccine. None of that is happening. You're being negative. You're being careless. And you're listening to, what, some rumour that you heard somewhere. Billy could become deaf if I don't take him in now and get him this MMR.
Most of the evidence linking measles with autism is kind of settled down, and most of the doctors and scientists agree that it probably isn't the major cause.
I've been working in pediatrics for almost 20 years. I think most pediatricians view vaccines as the number one thing they do for kids. Okay, there we go. And a high one.
All right.
All right. Okay. I'm young enough to not remember the days of kids in an iron lung because they were battling polio. Polio has essentially been eradicated from this country. In '98, the Wakefield study came out. My son had just been born. That study kind of pointed a finger at the MMR. As a parent, I was scared to give the MMR to my son. And as a matter of fact, I didn't give it to him on time because I wanted to see. I wanted to see what additional studies would show. And over time, additional studies did show that, no, it's safe. And so he did get the vaccine. If everybody stopped vaccinating, we'd be going back to